likes us, I don't know why. We may not be perfect, but heaven knows we try. But all around, even our old friends put us down. Let's drop the big one and see what happens.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, AJ Travis, Action Jack Travis, the man with the plan, the spider in the web here in Hollywood, California. I am an industry veteran. I've lived and worked here for almost 20 years, and I am bringing you the Hollywood Rebellion. My partner, Allie, she's off on another mission, so I'm going to go it alone today, and we're going to talk about that crazy Oscars ceremony. I know you all know what I'm talking about. I know you all watched it. Don't try to pretend like you didn't. Everybody in the world saw this Oscars broadcast. Well, actually, that's not the case. The Oscar ratings were the lowest they've been in a long, long time. And that's because, of course, Hollywood is turning everyone against itself by just being very anti-American and being very anti-Trump. But it all boomeranged back on them this year when they screwed up the Best Picture Oscar at the end of the night, the big finale. They blew it. They dropped the ball. There's been a lot of talk about what went down, a lot of explanations, a lot of apologies, a lot of recriminations, but nobody's telling you the real story about what's going on. And this is an important story. It's a deep story, and I'm going to break it down to you right now because having lived and worked here in Hollywood for almost 20 years, I've made a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends who work in the industry just like I do, and I had friends working the show back last Sunday night, and this is what they've told me. And they don't know that I do this podcast, so they're just talking, person to person like we all do. We all gossip here. They gave me the breakdown on what went down. And this is not a story you're going to hear anywhere else. You're only going to hear it here on the Hollywood Rebellion. So I, AJ, will now explain to you what exactly went down with that ridiculous Oscars mishap at the 89th Academy Awards. Cheryl Boone Isaacs is the president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. That's the organization that puts on the Oscars every year. They do a bunch of other junk, but the Oscars are the big deal. And she is the president. Of course, everyone loves to tell you she's the first African-American female president of the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. We're just going to call it the Academy because that's what we do here. We just call it the Academy here in Hollywood. She's the first African-American female president. She's also the first president who was never a producer, writer, actor, or director. She's the only person who's ever held the position of president of the Academy who's never actually made a movie. She's a marketing person. That's what she does. She's a marketer. So, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, a couple years ago, after she becomes the president of the Academy, she decides that she is going to make the Academy more diverse. Dun, dun, dun. Because as an African-American female, she can't stand the fact that there are groups that don't have a ton of African-American and or female representation, namely the Academy. And now that she's the president, she's going to fix that perceived problem. Even though it isn't a problem, she's going to fix it. Well, how is she going to do that? Well, I'll tell you. She launches an initiative called A2020. And under the auspices of A2020, she's going to fix this perceived imbalance in the racial makeup of the Academy. Well, she says this, and then everybody says, yeah, no thanks. And they go on with their lives. And then last year, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, this controversy comes up about Oscars So White. Remember Oscars So White? Came up out of nowhere. All of a sudden, everybody is very upset about the fact that there's not a lot of African Americans who win the Academy Awards. Because Hollywood's racist, right? So Cheryl Boone Isaacs wants to change the Academy, and everybody says, no thanks. And then out of nowhere, Oscars So White happens. And not that I believe in conspiracies or anything like that, but the fact that Cheryl Boone Isaacs just happened to have been a marketing professional, a marketing goddess, and this ridiculous Oscars So White thing happens only in social media. Doesn't come out. Nobody gives a speech and says this. It just pops up out of nowhere. I'm not saying that she started it. It's kismet, right? Just happened to happen that way. So Cheryl Boone Isaacs wants to change the Academy. Everybody says no thanks. Oscar So White happens. People start boycotting, and now the Academy membership is saying, okay, you can change things. So she puts a 2020, her diversity initiative, into action. So she invites a whole bunch of people, more than have ever been invited before, to join the Academy. A record 683 people, including 46% female and 41% people of color. A good percentage of whom may not exactly deserve to be invited, including people like Emma Watson. Yeah, she's fantastic. What does she do besides Harry Potter? Not that much. The Wayans brothers, yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, they definitely deserve to be in the Academy. Dakota Johnson, who is the star of 50 Shades of Grey, who just happens to be the star of the producer who she hires to run the show. So there's all these sketchy people who are not necessarily bad people, but Cheryl Boone Isaacs gives invitations to a whole bunch of people who in other years would never have gotten an invitation. But now they do because she wants to make it more diverse, so she lowers the standards. Yes, she gives affirmative action to a whole bunch of actors and directors and whatever who don't necessarily deserve to be in the Academy. She lowers the standards to get them in because she wants people who will vote to do what she wants. So she starts juggling the numbers. And most egregiously, Cheryl Boone Isaacs starts taking the vote away from people who she doesn't think will vote the way she wants. Specifically, she starts taking the vote away from older Academy members who worked in the industry back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. You know, the people who actually founded Hollywood. She takes their vote away. She gives it to people who aren't qualified, and she takes it away from people who built Hollywood. And this creates a backlash. She also takes away nominations for people who cause trouble, like this guy, Greg P. Russell, who did sound mixing on that fantastic 13 Hours movie, which just so happens to not make Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama look very good. Cheryl Boone Isaacs figures out a reason to take the Academy Award nomination away from Greg P. Russell, who worked on that movie, because, you know, she didn't really like what that movie said about her buddy Barack Obama, and so she took that away, and she did it just hours before the actual show was about to start. She goes through the Academy, tears up the membership, takes votes away from people she doesn't like, and does all of this to make the Academy more diverse in her eyes. Because that's fair, right? She's a social justice warrior who is now running the Academy. That's the long and the short of it. Well, guess what happens? A backlash happens between the Academy membership and Cheryl Boone Isaacs. So a lot of people who have been in the Academy for a long time, who've worked and struggled, they resent what she starts doing, and they decide that they're going to take action. And this year at the Academy Awards, they do just that. Now what happens? We know the story now, right? Here are the two accountants for PricewaterhouseCoopers, Brian Cohen and Martha Ruiz, and it's their job to not only count the votes, but to make sure that the two identical sets of envelopes, one in each briefcase that they carry to the awards, one envelope gets handed to the winner, and the other envelope gets disposed of, so it doesn't end up on eBay or in some online auction or something like that and make the Academy look cheap. So Brian Cullinan hands the winner their envelope, and the duplicate envelope is supposed to be destroyed by this woman, Martha Ruiz, his backup accountant. But that doesn't happen. Okay, what happens is that somebody who shall be nameless, who I may or may not know, took the duplicate envelope of Emma Stone's win for Best Actress and put it back into the pile for Brian Cullinan. And he gave that envelope to Warren Beatty, and Warren Beatty read that with Faye Dunaway. And that's what happened. So what you saw, what everybody else saw, was just an innocent mistake. But what actually happened was a civil war in the academy between the people who've been there for a long time and the people who are brand new coming in and changing things that don't necessarily need to be changed. And those people who've been in the academy for a long time, they know people just like me. They know people who worked on the production just like me. And a couple people who worked on that production made sure that the academy got sabotaged, got a little payback. Now, nothing major. They didn't burn the place down. But it is interesting that there have been a lot of mishaps that took place in this Academy Awards. Just before the Oscars actually happened, a big chunk of the stage actually fell over, crashed down. Not saying it was done on purpose, but I'm just saying, you piss off enough people who do the work in Hollywood, things like this happen. So, there were a whole bunch of problems with the Oscars. Not just the big one that everybody knows about, but there were a lot of little problems too. And this is because Cheryl Boone Isaacs took it upon herself to start remake the Academy in her image. And this is pushback against her authoritarian regime. People in Hollywood now see her like the rest of us saw President Obama for the last 8 years. He's just wrecking everything because he hated the way it was and he wants to remake it the way he wants it to be. Well, Cheryl Boone Isaacs is doing the same thing. And the people in the Academy and the people who worked on her broadcast are pushing back. Now, she, of course, did everything she can to make sure that all the blame was thrown onto the two accountants and they're banned forever from the show. But it doesn't matter because it's not the accountants who sabotaged this. It was the people who worked in the broadcast. And I've got news for you, Cheryl Boone Isaacs. There's an awful lot of us here in Hollywood that love Donald Trump. There's an awful lot of us who don't go for your diversity initiatives. I know you think that every single person here in Los Angeles County voted for Hillary Clinton, and yeah, a lot of them did, but almost 800,000 of us voted for Donald Trump, and that's right here in the heart of Hollywood. Forget about the people who live in the outlying areas, Orange County, the North, the East, the Inland Empire. Tons of people there voted for Donald Trump, but here, right here in the heart of Hollywood, almost 800,000 people voted for Trump. We are the Hollywood Rebellion. We are fighting against the forces that have taken over this great institution here in Hollywood. We are going to fight back. So everybody out there, everybody can hear my voice. Tell your friends to tune into this podcast, and I will keep you updated about what the resistance here in Hollywood is up to. We are the Hollywood Rebellion. We are fighting back, and we want you to fight back too because we love Hollywood and we want to get her back. God bless you. Good night.